May I have your attention? This time I'd like to introduce our people running for City Council. We have Doug Wilson, incumbent vocational teacher with great personality. Greg Balta was absent. He's executive director of Loma Linda University, couldn't make it. We have Jeff Allen, retired military teacher. Ken Henderson, council member, appointment, incumbent. And Jeffrey McConnell, RE broker and farmer.
Real estate.
Oh, sorry, real estate broker, farmer.
Thank you. Old McConnell's farm.
Old McConnell's farm.
Old McConnell's farm.
All right, I'll explain again the way the timer works. You'll have a maximum of 3 minutes, and you'll all answer the same question. We have 4 questions. So when you have 2 minutes remaining, you have a white card. When you have 3 minutes when you have 1 minute remaining, we have, it looks like a yellow card, kind of.
It's yellow.
It's yellow. John says it's yellow, so there. And when you have no minutes, stop, you have the red card. Everybody understand the rules? All right. First question. This goes for Doug. Should you be elected, can you tell us your top priorities and how you plan to accomplish them?
Welcome, everybody. Should you be elected, can you tell your top priorities for Grant Terrace? Clean up our main street, Martin Road. It's our entrance. The Gateway Project. It is a huge thing for us. And financial feasibility, you've already heard about quite a bit. I'm just going to use some points here, because these are the things that you're going to remember, one after another. Business partnerships, enhanced youth programs, safety, emergency preparation. That's a little bugaboo of mine. About a year ago, or actually a little more than a year ago, I asked to see what our emergency preparation program was. And unfortunately, it was kind of laying dead, because there had been a few position changes and so on. And so I went through it, made a real quick critique, and made some recommendations. And shortly after that, we got the program back on tap. And we have now adopted our emergency protocol. And we've trained our employees. And let's just face it, the best preparation, though, is for each one of us individually to be prepared. We have to be prepared. Our first responders are not going to be able to just sit on us. We're going to have to be prepared, and those of us that can pick up a hammer will have to do so. Those that know other things that can be useful, we're going to have to be prepared. But in your individual family home, I recommend heavily that you start putting some things away and get yourself ready. I don't want anybody to get hurt. Thank you.
So good evening. My name is Jeff Allen. You met me when you introduced me, and I want to thank you for attending this and allowing me to address you. My top priorities are at the very top. I'm a fiscal conservative, and I will always stand up against unfair taxes that are trying to be placed on our residents at whatever level. It may be county, it may be city, it may be state, and I will always stand up for you on that. I am a strong supporter of public safety, and I believe that our city is the safest city in the Inland Empire, and the statistics will show that on the Sheriff's Department website. I will strongly work to bring back our Citizens on Patrol force and make them much more robust in our city. And I will work diligently to reinstate and grow our community emergency response team that we have been lacking for the last several years, and so that we can have a good certified hazard mitigation plan, and we're eligible for FEMA disaster grants and funding in the event of a disaster. I will spend only money on safety projects that are are important for the safety of the residents, and I will name the 2 that I'm speaking of, and that's the stabilization of Mount Vernon Hill and the upgrades to the infrastructure of the Michigan Street corridor by upgrading the storm drains and fixing the streets with lights and crosswalks and sidewalks and bikeways so that our pedestrians, mainly our children going to the high school, will have a safe street to walk on. So those are my top priorities. I have others that are, very important priorities is to stay engaged in the community. I want to make sure that the community can get educated. I'd like to change the code enforcement to the city ordinance and regulations and rules education team. So that instead of just writing tickets, we can go out and we can get our public educated. I was talking with a member of the Chamber of Commerce, and I mentioned how when I was a kid growing up, we had an organization called Welcome Wagon. And wouldn't it be nice if all of our residents could know what our ordinances are? We think that they look at our website. We think they look at 92313. We think they read city news, but there are thousands of them that don't. And it would be great if there was a way that we could get all of that information to them, and so that they wouldn't have to go through the nut roll of moving their cars and getting tickets and their garbage cans and all that stuff. But that's a minor thing. The top issues for me are to keep our money in the bank, except for safety projects. I strongly believe in a rainy day fund, so you'll never have to face the threat of another disincorporation or another threat of another unfair tax hike. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming tonight. My top priorities for the City of Grand Terrace involve programs, projects, and activities that heighten our quality of life and the well-being of all of our citizens. There are a couple things that you should understand about that process. You'll hear from me and the other candidates specifics involving priorities for the City of Grand Terrace. But put simply, there are two things that we need to focus on. One, the growth rate of our expenditures exceeds the growth rate of our revenues. I'll repeat that. The growth rate in our expenditures exceeds the growth rate in our revenues. So unless we do something about that, we slowly asphyxiate as a community. One example, the increase in the sheriff's contract this year alone of $121,000 exceeds the increases in revenues that we receive as a city. So unless we do something about the revenue side of things, whatever we're talking about tonight simply cannot happen. My colleagues understand that. So there's a couple things that you need to understand from my perspective. We can't cut our way to prosperity, and we can't tax our way to prosperity. That leaves only one viable opportunity, viable option, and that is economic opportunity, economic growth. You've heard a number of candidates speak about economic development. You've heard a number of candidates speak about economic opportunity. I am the only candidate that has been speaking about these things from the very beginning. I am the only candidate that has established a website that identifies a program, projects, activities, and priorities for the city. It's called Grand Blue Rising. That's my website, Grand Blue Rising, www.kenhendersongt2018.com. So to summarize, everything that we're doing as a community has to be based upon job development, economic growth, better business-to-business relationships, better business-to-community relationships, better business-to-government relationships. Without the increases in revenue, most of what is being discussed can only be considered a mirage. So we need to focus on increasing our revenue. We do that with Grand Blue Rising. We do that with the Gateway Specific Plan, which I, as city manager, recruited to the city. The developer, Lewis Group of Operating Companies, has a long and successful relationship working with me and other communities. The same thing can happen here if we get behind that project and we get behind similar projects, including the economic development along the Barton Road corridor. So take this with you, ladies and gentlemen. Growth, economic opportunity, job development, that's our salvation going forward. Thank you.
Okay. My notes are behind me. My name is Jeffrey McConnell. I have been going to council meetings for 17 years, almost every one. I've been to more council meetings than all the candidates here tonight. I have been watching administration after administration after administration come and go, and nothing seems to really change a whole lot. So and I've fought City Hall on several things, and so I'm a reformer, I'm a fighter. So my campaign slogan is overhaul City Hall. Maybe you've seen it up and down the boulevard. And what overhaul really means, it doesn't mean drain the swamp necessarily. It means overhaul the way we do business. We're not business friendly. I've been saying it for years, Sally McGuire's been saying it for years, and others have been saying it for years. We need to be business friendly. If you're not, to attract businesses, you have to make it worthwhile to come. As a real estate broker and small-time investor, I work with builders, and I know what they go through. And it's no fun. It's like $30,000 in fees and permits just before you stick your shovel in the ground if you want to build a house on your piece of land. That doesn't include the architect, the engineer, and if they want to make you widen the street. So economic development, he's talking about it not having enough money because things are going up, expenses are going up. Part of the reason is for that. This new city manager 2 years ago when he came here, he increased the city staff, he made 5 new positions. 5 new government positions. Every new government job is nothing more than additional tax on you. If you're having trouble with a budget, well, I wonder why. I'm all about smaller government, shrink government, less intrusive government like our founding fathers started. Well, Mr. Henderson, I do agree, and we have spoken publicly about building up I believe in building out Grand Terrace without overbuilding Grand Terrace, because we get 40% of our budget approximately from rooftops. Okay, so I'm in the real estate business. I see what we need. I also deal with developers and small-time investors when they try and buy a house or build a property, build a lot and build property. The city comes down and tells them you got to widen the street, and you're on a corner and you got to widen both streets. It makes the project unsustainable. When I first came to Grand Terrace, I wanted to build a garage, and they said for a $10,000 garage, I had to widen the street, curb gutter, sidewalk, move a telephone pole, all for a garage. Now, a regular person would run away, but not me. I fought. We compromised. I built my garage. But that's just my whole point. We're not business friendly. I like to think out of the box. All my ideas, I try and say, we can come up with ideas to make it more business friendly for the small guys who want to build an extra house for their son or daughter or whatever, so that we can build up our economic tax base. Thank you.
Second question for Doug Wilson. If you've been on the council, can you tell us what you will do differently in the future and why you haven't done it in the past? If you've not been on the council, can you tell us what you plan to do differently from the current or past council and how you plan to accomplish it?
I've been on the council. I've also spent 21 years on the planning commission, and for most of that I was the chairman of the planning commission. So aggregate, my term has been 25 years in service to the city. Walk softly and carry a big stick. I mean, and the bottom line is become more involved in interagency coordination. I like to appeal to state representatives to fund needed improvements. I pursue a city fireworks show. Work on economic development, putting boxes on lots to increase property tax yield. You've already heard about that. It really works. In my business for 46 years as a construction land development guy, that's what we knew was the formula. Ensure community safety, work on the accrued unfunded liability debt that is a ghost thing hanging over our shoulders, and increasing retirement costs, fund cost of living increases, free up the remainder of bond proceeds, continue to pursue economical city management, help the city manager find more money before we spend it, plan for multifaceted youth programs, which is dear to my heart, begin work on a redevelopment plan for the city. We have no redevelopment plan. This city's been in existence for a while, and it's something that we're going to have to face. Pursue funding for road maintenance from the state, respond to the new digital Main Street marketplace. No longer is there a cute little store it just doesn't survive. We know the ones that do. Address homelessness and the education pertaining to it. Those are some of the things that I would find as goals. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. So I've been a planning commissioner for 5 years. Prior to that, I helped found, I was a charter member and helped found the city's community emergency response team. For 5 years, I was the director of that, and we grew the team to over 50 residents, well-trained, prepared for any type of disaster that the city may encounter to assist. Now, what I would do is also the city is working to reestablish the CERT team right now, and that is one of the projects I would like to get our youth involved in. My goal is to start a youth council, and I will model it after First District Supervisor Robert Lovingood for the San Bernardino County. He has a youth council, and it's highly effective for accomplishing ideas that benefit the youth and the community, and who better to ask but our youth. And so I would like to form a youth council, and they'll report to the city council periodically on issues concerning the youth and ways that we can address them. I'll also work real hard to enhance our citizens on patrol and put more of them on our city streets. That's what the law enforcement experts have said will affect the keeping the bad guys out of town, is when they see a marked car on the street, you know, they know to go to another neighborhood. We used to have a rather robust cops force, citizens on patrol volunteers, but our sheriff's department took it, sent it away to more needed areas. And that may be why you're wondering why you haven't seen them in a long time. And that's another reason for you to know that safety in our city is extremely high. If we had a problem with safety, don't you think the sheriff would be sending our cops back to us? No, he's not. He's sending them up to where there's more crime and they can be better used. I'll work to bring them back to Grand Terrace and dedicate them to our city as much as I can, and to grow our CERT team to keep our city safe in the event of a disaster. Thank you. And I will always keep fiscal conservancy in the forefront. Keeping more money in your pocket and not in taxes and unfair tax increases. Thank you.
I'm the lead senior council person. I was appointed as a result of a resignation by my predecessor, Brian Renars. The city council conducted a competitive interview process, and I was appointed on the first ballot. So I've been on the council since December 2017. Having said that, most of you folks should understand that for 37 years, I served in the public sector as a public sector executive. I've been a community development director, economic development director, redevelopment director, assistant city manager, and city manager in those 37 years. I've worked for or worked directly with 37 different city council members. That gives me quite a bit of an education as to how to proceed and how to work effectively with council members. Having said that, my goal going forward and to ensure that I continue to improve as a council member is to do a better job of relationship building with my fellow council members. There are a number of ways to do that, and I want to just outline a couple. You'll hear me say again and again that I believe in the greater good principle. That is to say, the greatest amount of good for the greatest amount of people, because some of you are going to tell me to go north one day, and a few minutes later, some of you are going to tell me to go south. And then someone's going to tell me to go east and west. So how do I reconcile those differences of opinion? Well, one way is the greater good principle. And the other is to call upon my 37 years of executive level public sector experience and make the best choices. And the third and final is to elaborate on my experience and to ensure that I provide the kind of advice and leadership that this council needs to carry out our vision, the Vision 2030 that I was involved in as city manager, Grand Blue Rising, my own program, which complements Vision 2030 perfectly, and to focus again on enhancing revenues to this community. It's important that you understand that.
Nothing can happen of significance other than what we're doing today if we do not enhance our revenues. There are lots of requests for assistance. There are lots of requests for cultural amenities and community facilities. We can do all that. I've done it before in other communities. Every single community that I've worked in, and there have been 5, including the city of Grand Terrace, I've left in a better condition than I found it. The same thing can happen here in Grand Terrace. The Gateway project that everyone references, as they rightly should, is a project that I brought to the city, and the developer entity is one that I have a close professional relationship with. We have a great opportunity before us. Thank you.
Well, I'm going to go back to the overhaul City Hall. Part of it also includes the Barton Road Specific Plan as a good example. Most of you don't even know about it, but it was drafted like in 1991, I think, when the internet was in its total infancy. How many of us knew back then that by now brick and mortar would be disappearing and Amazon online would be making all the sales at Christmas time? Nobody envisioned that, but it's never been updated. It's never been overhauled. Okay? Right now, why do we have a lot of vacant commercial properties, land? Part of the reason is because a lot of big box stores are leaving. So we need to overhaul. The Barton Road Specific Plan is just one of the examples, okay? We have to think differently. We have to think also what's going to look like in 20, 30 more years, because it may be totally different. Maybe everything will be bought online. I doubt it, but because we just want things immediately. So one of the things I wanted to also include was to change is get we the people more involved. I'm all about technology. I've been fighting for about 4 or 5 years now with trying to bring in more cameras at intersections to help solve crime, because they're a whole lot cheaper than a sheriff. Everybody wants a sheriff, but they're expensive. We've so far gotten, I think, we've just got 8 more ALPR cameras, automatic license plate recognition technology, and we've got about a dozen of those little flashing blue lights now at intersections. Those there's people in this room have benefited from those as solved crimes. I've been following it with Detective Wolf. It's very important. They're cheaper than sheriffs. Sheriffs are about over $300,000, and you can get about, roughly, because they're all a little differently, where you put them, maybe 16 ALPRs. The blue light specials, what I call them, are cheaper, and they will last for 10 years. They don't go on vacation. They don't get coffee and donuts down the street. They're always working for us 24/7, and they're everywhere eventually. I want to create a cyber fence around the city with big signs that say, "Cyber City, criminals beware," something to that effect. We're watching you, okay? When there's a crime, the first thing the sheriffs do is they look around, talk to the neighbors, and who's got cameras? That's the first thing they do. So I also want to get we the people involved. With the technology we have, we can, anybody has any question how to do anything? Go to YouTube, the answer's there. There's 30 videos on the same thing that you want to do. We can use vlogs, that's video logs, webinars or whatever, and get people involved, because it's hard when these ad hoc committees, which I've been on quite a few, it's hard to get people to commit to like 5, 6, 8 meetings and participate. And you're only getting 8 minds with ideas. I want to get hundreds of minds. Doing a poll is a great idea, but include that too. Thank you.
Our third question for Doug Wilson. Can you give us one positive quality that you can share about your opponent?
One positive item about my opponent is he's not here. But let me just tell you a little bit about Greg Badley. He's a great guy. He's involved in youth ministry in his church. He is in the process of putting himself through a master's program. And I think, I'm just conjecture, maybe running for office was something that he probably always wanted to do and just didn't realize it was going to take as much time as it does. And it does take a lot of time. In the time that I've been involved, I've been, with the city council meetings, it's been at least 200 or more formal council meetings, not counting all the study sessions and things that we do. And on top of that, it's been 2,000 plus planning commission meetings. over the last 21 years. So it takes some devotion. But that's what our founding fathers found as well. That's what they represented. That's how we got where we are. And so I don't think I can really shy away from it. I know I've got other priorities. I'm involved in my church. I been all the way up until recently, I've been teaching folks that are oftentimes felons and teaching them how to feed themselves by doing construction and trying to use what I've done for the last 46 years to a good purpose. But I also sense this. The government is a representative form for us. And for us, we are fortunate in the fact that local government actually gives us an opportunity to speak and to participate. And as we know, as we go up the chain, state, federal, it's a tough road. It's taken me a lot of phone calls to get up there, but I don't usually give up real easy. So this is our opportunity to participate in our government, to have our say, and to make sure that the message either gets through at the first time and gets maintained. I'm a fiscal conservative, and people know that about me. In fact, I'm the one vote out of the 5 that always ends up voting no when it comes to money. But I take a little bit of pride in that because I think there are a lot of people out there that if they had the opportunity would be here doing the same thing if they didn't have their kids climbing all over them. Anyway, thank you.
Oh, you bet. This is the one I might run out of time on. I have 2 opponents. I will run out of time. I've known Mr. Henderson for a few years. I met him. I was the director of the Community Emergency Response Team from 2009 until just the end of 2013, whenever I became a planning commissioner in 2014, and have been ever since. But Mr. Henderson was on the, that Yes on Measure C committee. He was the chairman of the ad hoc committee, and I kind of was trying to follow that, and then he became the acting city manager in 2014 when I became a planning commissioner. So one thing about Mr. Henderson is he's certainly dedicated to our city, his home, our home. It's obvious he's willing to put his time forward to sit on ad hoc committees and render and he's so knowledgeable, well-versed, and speaks very well. He's so well-spoken that, I've learned from him in the years that, I've watched him sit behind the dais. Mr. McConnell over here, Jeffrey, and I have gone back for several years. I hung out down at his farm, and enjoyed some of the produce off of the farm that he offered me, and I felt that was very generous of him to do what he did. He's a longtime Lions Club member, and the Lions are dedicated to service to our community. I admire the Lions, and he's been involved in that for a long time. And one thing I can say positive about Jeffrey is, there's a lot of things, but one I will say is he is very determined. I admire that. So he's very determined to affect change. And I admire that in him. That's why I stand up here, to affect change and try to prevent any future tax increases be put on you, and to get a youth council started. And many of us speak of that, but I'm going to work on getting some internships for our youth so that they can search out some career paths. It was talked about in the 2030 vision, but never implemented. And another thing about that 2030 vision that I had a problem with is the first solution to all the problems is always to search out for property tax increases and sales tax increases rather than search for economic development. But that's not part of this question. Thank you so much.
Well, as Mr. Allen indicated, I've had several official roles with the city, and I believe that maybe both of my opponents have a better feel for me than I do for them. At the same time, with respect to Jeff Allen, I admire his commitment to the CERT team, the Community Emergency Response Team. And I say commitment because it's had an up and down time over the years. And we just recently reconstituted it for the city council at this last council meeting. Jeff was a critical part of bringing that back to life. And as he's indicated, he's had a critical role in playing on a policy level or policy recommendation level the community emergency response team. And it's in a city of the size of Grand Terrace with limited resources, being prepared for natural disasters is extremely important. And so I commend Jeff for his work in that regard. Jeff McCollum and I served on the Budget Advisory Committee, and it was a good experience for both of us. I think Jeff and I don't always agree. We see things a little bit differently from time to time. At the same time, I recognize the value in his comments, in his commentary, in his approach. And if you listen closely, there's a lot to learn. And he's had a significant experience here in the Grand Terrace. I admire his community service the most because it's extensive, as Mr. Allen's indicated. He's with the Lions Club, and we all know about the Lions Club and the giving nature of the Lions Club. So I mentioned earlier about the things that I would like to do better in terms of being on the city council, and one of those things is to do a better job of relationship building. That doesn't extend just to the city council, it extends to my opponents, it also extends to all of you in the community. Because if we don't dip our oars in the water at the same time, we're going to have a real problem. You know, my dad had, before he passed, had a triple bypass surgery. And when he came out of the recovery room, the first thing he asked for was ice cream. So we knew he was doing great. His complexion was ready. He was much more vital than when he went in. I say that because I believe Grand Terrace needs triple bypass surgery. Okay? In these areas, business to business relationships, business to community relationships, and business to government relationships. And if we have that bypass surgery and we eliminate those restrictions, the sky's the limit. There's no telling what we can do. If we get our act together at the city council, and we surely will, and the community supports what we're trying to accomplish, and we bring about the most significant economic development projects the city has ever faced in the next year, year and a half, 2 years. Thank you, sir, for the stop sign.
Well, good, I'm last and close to the door. Mr. Jeff Allen, I've known him for quite a while, and he, like many others in this room, have come down to my farm, and I've given all my food away for the last 2 years to everybody in the community. And they all call it Old McConnell's Farm. I didn't start that. I prefer middle age, but I'm stuck with it. I've seen him quite a few times. He's a lover of nature, riding horses next door at the Maxinoff Horse Ranch. And I've watched him when he got on the Planning Commission meeting. I've been going to Planning Commission meetings for almost all of them for 17 years. I've been in more Planning Commission meetings than anybody in this room except old Mr. Wilson over there. He's got me beat by 8 years. And so I appreciate your desire to not approach any more new taxes, as I do. Mr. Henderson, he retired in 2012, I think. That's about when the Governor Brown cut the RDA money. And he's really good at, what he did for 30 years, I think, was spend taxpayers' money up in Apple Valley. RDA money, so he's really good at it. But he came down here and retired, and then he came out of retirement to be our city manager for a year. And I appreciate that and the fact that he was able to prove to everybody, yes, we can have a city manager for less than $200,000. And then I served with him on the Budget Advisory Committee. He was chairman, I was vice chair. There was 12-member people there, and we had a lot of talks. We sat next to each other, and as he says, we don't always agree on everything. I went out of that and started my NOAA Measure C campaign in 2013, if you guys remember that. That was a rough ride. It split the town. But I proved to myself that I could make a change in this city. And this is one of the reasons why, after 17 years of watching all the administrations come and go, I want to make a real change. So I formed If you see my signs on Barton Road, it says Overhaul City Hall, and it's got my name, Mr. Wilson's, and Sylvia Robles. We don't always agree on everything, as they said during the mayor's race, and I don't agree with everything they do or say. But we need 3 votes to be able to affect real change in this community. And Mr. Henderson, I agree with him. We've stood at public comments, because I speak a lot at council meetings about more rooftops. We need more rooftops, because 40% of our budget pretty much comes from rooftops. So, and infrastructure. If you build infrastructure, the builders will come. You have to make it easy for the builders to come. And this is something we both agree upon. So we can agree upon some things and disagree on others. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Do you have a business in the city of Grand Terrace? If yes, does your business currently have a business license, and will your business?
First, I want to clarify something. I may be the old man, but actually, Jeffrey McConnell's older than I am. Do I have a business in the city of Grand Terrace? No. If yes, does your business currently have a business license, and will your business benefit from you sitting on the council? As of October 1st, let's hear some applause, I am retired and have applied for Social Security. And I'm already on Medicare. So that is proof, okay? Incontrovertible proof. I'd like to talk just for a little bit of the minutes that I've got, though. According to the 2030 vision, our mission is to preserve and protect our community and its exceptional quality of life through thoughtful planning within the constraints of fiscally responsible government. We need to be financially secure, well above the line. We are in the middle of the line now. Boxes on lots. New construction, redevelopment, tax revenues multiplied by a factor of 30 or 40 times. When we get our share of that, but it sure gets a whole lot better when we've got rooftops. Safety and other quality of life line items get funded. We need to increase our capture. You know that there's supposed to be 45,000 cars a day going up to 215? And as we know, everybody goes through Barton Road, right? We already know we are a hard target smack in the middle of circulation routes. We've had it proved to us by Lewis, to be honest. They've done their homework. Instead of always suffering the crime and traffic that comes of it, let's capture more of our market. It's ours. We own it. We are already engaged in our Midas program, and intelligent revenue comes in all shapes and sizes. So I want to emphasize, in the last 30 seconds I have here, that I'm very much for economic development. Nature of the animal. Been around development for a long time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. No, I do not. I've never had a business in Grand Terrace. I moved here 19 years ago. Excuse me. My family and I moved here 19 years ago, bought our house over here on Brentwood Street. That's the only financial interest that I have in this city. You can check my Form 700 if you'd like to verify that. So your interests are my interests. That's my job. And that's the business that I'll be in, is the business of reaching out, interacting with the residents on a daily basis if necessary, informing the residents of issues coming before them, not just at the city level, but at the county and state level. How many of you knew about the fire tax increase before it was too late to do anything about it? Well, that's what I'll be as your member representative, because I stood up in front of the Board of Supervisors twice, and I'm going again next week to speak in front of the Board of Supervisors and tell them how wrong they are and how unfair that tax is. So your issues are my issues, your concerns will be my concerns. I don't own little plots of ground all over the city that I'm trying to develop and get the city to, make it easier for me. I want to make our life in bring up our quality of life here for everyone. So, no, I don't own a business and I don't plan to.
No business in Grand Terrace. So no need for a business license. So I'll take the rest of the time just to explain a few things that I think are important for you to understand.
We received a report from an outside consultant about the sales tax that we should be capturing here in Grand Terrace that goes to outlying communities. So there are 25 categories studied, and in 23 of the 25 categories, Grand Terrace is in the negative, meaning Grand Terrace citizens are purchasing goods and services, sales taxable goods and services in other communities, and so we don't capture that revenue here in town. I mention that because, as Mr. McConnell and others have mentioned, I worked for Apple Valley for 16 years. And when I got to Apple Valley, 70% of the sales tax it could have generated was going to Victorville and outlying communities. We worked real hard for a number of years, didn't have a lot to show for it, but when the economy went vertical in 2004, we were ready. And I emphasize we were ready because if you're not ready when an opportunity presents itself in economic development, you don't have enough time to get ready when it's knocking on your door. So in 2004, the economy went vertical, and so did we as an economic development team. So over the next 4 years, we permitted 3.5 million square feet of brand new state-of-the-art commercial retail. During the same time frame, we permitted over 2 million square feet of industrial. Apple Valley's general fund budget went from $14.5 million in 2004 to $20.5 million in 2008. And the town council was able to hire 5 sworn deputies in one fell swoop and solving many of our problems because Apple Valley was 78 square miles when I got there and 83 square miles when I left, and trying to cover that community with the limited police force was very difficult. So hiring 5 sworn officers and support personnel occurred directly as a result of our economic development efforts. The same thing can happen here. I've done it. My colleagues and those in the audience have talked about it, and I understand that. I support what they're saying, but I've done it. They haven't. I have. You need to remember that. Vote for me November 6th. Thank you.
Yes, I have a business license. For 17 years here, I wear many hats. I've been a contractor, a real estate agent, now broker, and a part-time caregiver even for 12 years. And I know the struggles of businesses, as my 2 opponents don't. And in my travels, I deal with other businesses. And when I was editor of the Blue Mountain Outlook for 6 years, trying to get ads for the Blue Mountain Outlook as a member of the Chamber Board of Directors, they would tell me their problems and troubles. So that's one of the reasons why I always was yelling, this place is not business friendly, because it isn't. So I've been struggling. The only way I can help is to get on the council, form a coalition, and do something about it. So I understand that. I'm the guy that he's referring to that owns bits and pieces of land around town. Okay, I've been struggling and been stepped. I won't build new anymore because it's just too expensive. I was saying earlier, we need to make it easier for those who want to build, because rooftops is where we make the most of our money. Grand Terrace Road, right at Vista Grande, there's a house there that used to have whoop-de-doos there, or the BMX, if you've seen it, over by Honey Hills. She was going to build 2 houses like well over 15 years ago there for her children, but they stepped on her and said, you got to widen the streets, curb gutter, sidewalk, all this stuff, and she never built it. Now there's 2 custom homes we lost money on for over 15 years. I can point out several other properties that are vacant or near vacant that have this problem. We need to solve those problems and make Grand Terrace look more pretty, beautiful in our neighborhoods, and it also bring in more money. As like he was saying, the sales tax. So sales tax goes out the door. Part of the reason why is we don't have the demographics in 3.5 square miles. Okay? When we're done building what we're building, Aegis is building, Greenbrier is building on Mount Vernon, and Randolph Lewis is going to build, we'll have increased by 900 residences, which is great, but that's not good enough. High Grove, when they're full done with their build out during this boom right now, it'll be about 2,000 new residences. A lot of them will come by here. The reason why we had a lot of vacant commercial properties isn't just because of the Barton Road specific plan, isn't just because we're not business friendly, it's because we don't have the demographics. If you heard that the Smart & Final was going to come here, the old Stater Brothers, they didn't because as Mr. Stankiewicz said, we didn't have the traffic count. So if business wants to come here, they're going to do the demographic study if they're smart, and most of them are. And if they don't see what they like, they go down the hill. If there's stores aren't here that we will spend our tax dollars out, they will go down the hill or somewhere else. Thank you.
Okay, now we have 3 minutes for closing statements. We'll start with you, Doug. Tell us your background and why we should vote for you.
I should be able to do this by heart, right? The question is, who am I? You need to know. Budget watchdog, numbers guy, legacy builder, incumbent, vocational instructor. In the long run, 25 years of service to the city. 4 years as a city councilman and advisory board member, 21 years on the planning commission, most of that as chairman and architectural review board member. 7 years on the Lions Club, and after a while it just got to be too much. Have served in several positions of responsibility in my chosen church, and that's no small thing. Experience counts. It's been my privilege to attend and instrument the business of more than 200 Grand Terrace City Council meetings and 2,000 Planning Commission meetings. In my professional life, I was authorized to go one-on-one with jurisdictional officials at cities and counties all over Southern California, from the desert to the sea. All right? 46 years in the industry, $100 million annual budgets, cash flow, scheduling, legal agreements, contracting, and bonding. I don't rely solely on the experts, quote unquote, because they're all over the place. Troubleshooting, working with local jurisdictions, creating communities for families to live in. Government and business got to walk hand in hand with the needs of the community to prosper. I'm also a 27-year licensed contractor, 27 years worth of light construction and development management certificate from UCI, and 5 years as a vocational instructor at Technical Employment Training. 29 years married to my marvelously innovative, intelligent, inventive, beautiful wife who's sitting right over there. My daughter is a successful medical professional. My granddaughter is attending Washington University and pursuing a medical degree. And I've been here for 38 years, and I even built some of the stuff back up in there. Vested interest in the community, treat city checkbook like it was my own. I'm still for all the good government we can afford. No more, no less. I do my homework. I vote no on your behalf when spending doesn't make sense. Waste, bailouts, and budget mysteries don't fly with me, and numbers never lie. During my term, just a quick highlight, I didn't do it by myself, though. Secured $5 million in grants and bond proceeds. We paid off the city hall, built the dog park, repaired roads, maintained critical services, did a whole bunch of Alpra cameras, fixed community pool, renovated soccer fields. See, we've been doing our jobs, okay, in the long run, and I thank you for your time.
Well, thank you. Okay, I'll try to be brief. I spent 21 years in the U.S. Army and retired in 2003, and we had already purchased our house here, and so we settled in here. And I started teaching high school, and I taught high school for a few years, and then I worked at the Veterans Hospital. I helped create several alternative therapy programs for people suffering with disabilities, and I started 3 nonprofit companies that are still in existence today providing those services. I earned 2 college degrees while I was on active duty in the Army. I've got my wife and I have been married 32 years, and my 2 daughters are here with me tonight, and my daughter's raising her kids here in Grand Terrace, so my family's multi-generational here in the city. I have been on the Planning Commission for 5 years. I'm a graduate of the California League of Cities Planning Commissioners Academy. I went 2 years to that and attended and passed all of the classes and training. I've learned a lot from the being a planning commissioner for your city. Prior to that, being the director of the CERT team, and on the CERT team for 8 years. I got to know all areas of the city and all the residences, and the things that our citizens and our residents really is important to them. And so I intend to continue and grow that relationship with the community and myself. and I will be out there in the community constantly. I will inform the community of the events, and I will work to establish and grow this youth council so our youth have some great opportunities. I'll continue to only support paying money for projects that are going to be to your benefit safety-wise, and none of this nice, pretty stuff until we have a rainy day fund so we're not faced with what we were faced with before, a few years ago, whenever the market went south on us. And so that's was my impetus for getting into this race, and to represent you on City Council. And I will respectfully ask for your vote. I'm having a meet and greet next Sunday at Rollins Park. Starts at 11 a.m. I'm bringing the pie and my ears. You bring your ideas. I'll even have plates. You don't even bring that, okay? Just bring your ideas and your voice, and I'll bring the pie. And let's have a conversation about this city, because this city is got a great future on the horizon. That Lewis development is going to bring in about $1 million a year into our coffers real soon. We just need to be patient. We don't need to jump the gun on this. That development is going to churn and power our city for what we need for years to come. And I applaud whoever was responsible for bringing it here. I think it was a team effort, and I'm a team player. And I plan to make sure that whenever I sit on the council, that we get along, that it's cordial and we respect and in our discussions, and we show respect to each other and to the citizens that come before us. Thank you.
Thank you. Born in Mobile, Alabama, moved to California. My parents did when I was a toddler. I was one of 5 siblings, now 4. Attended private schools for the most part. I think UCLA Graduate School was the first public school I attended. Received a degree in history and political science as a baccalaureate, and interdisciplinary study of politics in graduate school. My family has a history of service, of public service. I am one of 3 siblings involved in public service as a career. I've had many opportunities over years to work on the other side of the fence. I've collaborated and partnered with the development community over the course of my career, and so I respect that, but I felt and continue to feel that my focus and my impact on the community is best on the public sector side, and I've been able to affect some very significant quality of life projects throughout the course of my career. So what do you want in a council person? What do you want for November 6th going forward? Do you want someone with experience? You can check that box with me. Do you want someone with direct on-point experience, 37 years? You can check that box with me. Do you want someone who's knowledgeable about development on the public sector side? You can check that box with me. If you believe as I believe, as I said at the outset, we can't cut our way to prosperity. And we can't tax our way to prosperity. So the only option we have is to grow our way to prosperity. But we have to crawl before we can walk, and walk before we can run. I'm not comfortable with our budget situation. Others may be. I know that if there's another hiccup, we're going to have the same issue that we had before. We need to prevent that. We are in a boom economy nationwide, and Grant Terrace should have much more to say, or much more accomplished during the boom economy. And we need to move ahead with our revenue generation economic development strategy while the window of opportunity is still available to us. We have a convergence of events. We have a fork in the road. We have a booming economy. We have a great developer, and we need to take the right steps to make it happen. In 2005, when we had an opportunity to have a Lowe's of Hope improvement store, what did? We fumbled the ball as we were going into the end zone. Those revenues that we could have realized over the last 13 years would have been significant. We can't afford to do that again as a community. Going forward, understand this. I've worked in 5 cities. I've had a demonstrated track record of success in every single city. It's a matter of public record. You don't have to take my word for it. You research Apple Valley, San Bernardino, Lancaster, and Grant Terrace, and you'll see that Ken Henderson gets the job done. Thank you.
Well, I can call myself a man of the people, because everything I've done, which I'm about to read, is I'm all over town. I talk to people for the last 17 years, and I like to roll up my sleeves and get my hands dirty. And even though I'm older than Mr. Wilson, it's because I work hard and I eat organic food. So for 42 years, I've been building, fixing up houses pretty much, and as a contractor for 30 of those years, and 42 years I've had a real estate license. Now I'm a broker. And in Grand Terrace, I came here 18 years ago, and I've been trying to do the same as I come here. I've always lived in small towns my whole life. I'm from a small township in Northeast Ohio, and I have Midwestern values. I'm an old Boy Scout, been all over the Sierras, done portages up in the wilds of Canada. I love fishing, but wish I could have had time to do it. But 40 years ago, we became a city for self-determination. That means we didn't want Colton County or outsiders making laws or deciding what was best for us, we the people. But over time, the growing oppressive bureaucracy at this city hall, as I've watched for 17 years, mostly non-residents, have slowly fallen out of touch. Code enforcement is growing as we speak. The city manager is doing mission creep on the size of the bureaucracy. So I've attended nearly all the council meetings and active advocate for Grand Terrace, watched administrations and city employees come and go, served on the board of Chamber of Commerce, 6 years as editor of the Blue Mountain Outlook, 14 years in the Lions Club, chairman of the Parks and Rec Committee, currently on the Planning Commission, vice chair of the Ad Hoc Budget Committee with Mr. Henderson. I've organized petitions, multiple council workshops and committees. And I understand what we the people want. I feel that I have the pulse of the people. We want a safe community of soccer moms and little league dads where we can safely walk down the streets at night, more public safety without more taxes. It's time for change. If you want smaller, less oppressive government, you vote for me. They talk about Measure C. I was no on Measure C. I went out of that Budget Advisory Committee and formed a PAC, threw in my own money, raised money, got signs, whatever. If you remember the NOAA Measure C signs, that was me. It was a tough battle. We went to the polls, the ballot box. We kicked their butts 2-1. I'm sorry, but we did a good job. I was shocked, but that was the voice of the people. And that's what I want to do, is voice of the people. He was for Measure C, I was against Measure C. So if you want bold, innovative ideas, if it's time to overhaul City Hall, vote for change, vote for me. Okay, so this Lewis project everyone's talking about, they want to build 740 some units, residential units down at the end of Van Buren, and they bought that land from the city, but the commercial part to the north of that, all the way to Commerce Way, they're not under contract to buy from those property owners. That may never happen. So our budget might bump up a little bit, but like it happened in 2015, the crash came, that developer split. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate all that you've done tonight. The discussion was great. Appreciate your commitment to change and make things better. Let's give them a great round of applause.